WWE wrestler and a good friend of Chris Benoit's. I want to ask you about the canceled appearances that he was sending text messages about. The sense I got, and it was just my gut feeling, was that it was so horrific for him to cancel these appearances, that to even say no to one appearance feels like the end of the world. Do you think there might have been any correlation between them arguing, which apparently he and his wife were arguing over him cutting back his schedule, and then apparently she dies and then he fails to show up over the weekend for these appearances? Do you see anything there brewing?
Yeah, I do. I think you might find something there. He may have been in a tug-of-war where he was trying to hold on to his position, maybe stay at the very top of wrestling, and there may have been pressure on him to, you know, be more available to longer tours on the road and to be more of a primetime player sort of thing on the circuit. And at the same time, his wife might have been pulling him the other direction, saying, you know, because I can only imagine the difficulties in raising a child that has autism, and I'm sure it must be a real workload. And she may have been overwhelmed by all that and needed Chris's help, and maybe through just, you know, the way they fought over it, maybe that was the trigger to all of this. Who knows?
Yeah, and I want to go back to Irvin Muchnick, author of Wrestling Babylon, because there's some debate over whether or not he had recently been demoted or faced the prospect of demotion. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is a very inside baseball kind of thing, that he went apparently from Raw to SmackDown to ECW, and his friend, Chris Jericho, said no, he wasn't demoted, but then others are saying yes, perhaps it was a demotion. What do you say?
No, it definitely was not a demotion, although he was in a paranoid state where he may have felt that it was a demotion. In fact, he had a job for life in the WWE. He was so well regarded. When he was sent to ECW, he was slated to win the ECW championship and to be sort of a player coach to help develop some of the other wrestlers. That's how highly regarded he was. You know, Jane, watching Bret Hart, I have tremendous respect for, one of the great wrestlers of all time. I have to disagree with him a little bit about the steroid thing.
Go for it. Just cut to the chase.
Well, you know, he's kind of a Zelig of death in wrestling. I mean, he lost his brother Owen, not from steroids. He lost a brother-in-law, Davey Boy Smith, yes, from steroids. And he's lost many friends, and Chris Benoit was like a brother. And I think to say that wrestling is getting rid of steroids or in any way, shape, or form that's meaningful is just incorrect. And it's a measure of how protective he and all wrestlers are of the wrestling business. And maybe it's a measure of his love of wrestling, because we know he has no love for Vince McMahon.
You want to respond to that?
No, that's not true. You know, I don't think there's any place for steroids in wrestling, and if steroids are somehow at the bottom of all this, I'd be the first one. I'd like to know, I'd like to see it, and I'd like to see it proved. I mean, I just know a lot of people that have taken steroids over the years, and people take steroids all around the world. In some of these European countries, steroids are quite normal, and you don't see a lot of this kind of violent. This is not a normal.
Now wait a second.
I
have to jump in here, Brett. Brett, there's been a clear correlation made between steroid use and abuse and violence, and there's a term for it, roid rage, and there have been studies on this. I mean, you can't say, oh, there's no connection.
No, I know about roid rage and all that, but I don't think to this extreme. If that's the case, to go to this extreme, I think there's probably a lot more to it than just steroids. It might be a combination of a bunch of pills. But I don't think you can lay this at steroids. In the end, you're not going to be able to, I don't think.